Hey everybody, if you're reading in the paper book, we're going to be starting at the top of 187. Here we go. I poured some golden dramas into the pouch. As soon as I closed it, there was a sound like a cash register. The package floated off the table and disappeared with a pop. I am impertinent, I said. I looked at Annabelle, daring her to criticize. She didn't. She seemed resigned to the fact I had a major talent for ticking off the gods. Come on, she muttered. We need a new plan. Chapter 12. We get advice from a poodle. We were pretty miserable that night. We camped out in the woods 100 yards from the main road in a marshy clearing that local kids had obviously been using for parties. The ground was littered with flattened soda cans and fast food wrappers. We'd taken some food and blankets from Auntie M's, but we didn't dare light a fire to dry our damp clothes. The Furies and Medusa had proved enough from excitement for today. We didn't want to attract anything else. We decided to sleep in shifts. I volunteered to take first watch. Annabeth curled up on the blankets and was snoring as soon as her head hit the ground. Grover fluttered with his flying shoes to the lowest bough of a tree, put his back to the trunk, and stared at the night sky. Go ahead and sleep, I told him. I'll wake you if there's any trouble. He nodded, but didn't close his eyes. It makes me sad, Percy. What does? The fact you signed up for this stupid quest? No, this makes me sad. He pointed at all the garbage on the ground. And the sky. You can't even see the stars. They've polluted the sky. This is a terrible time to be a satyr. Oh yeah, I guess you'd be an environmentalist. He glared at me. Only a human wouldn't be. Your species is clogging up the world so fast. Ugh, never mind. It's useless to lecture a human. At the rate things are going, I'll never find Pan. Pam? Like the cooking spray? Pan! He cried indignantly. P-A-N, the great god Pan. What do you think I want a searcher's license for? A strange breeze rustled through the clearing, temporarily overpowering the stench of trash and muck. It brought the smell of berries and wildflowers and clean rainwater, things that might have been in these woods. Suddenly I was nostalgic for something I had never known. Tell me about the search, I said. Grover looked at me cautiously, as if he was afraid I was making fun. The god of wild places disappeared 2,000 years ago, he told me. A sailor off the coast of Ephesus heard a mysterious voice crying off the shore. Tell them that the great god Pan has died. When the humans heard the news, they believed it. They had been pillaging Pan's kingdom ever since. But for satyrs, Pan was our lord and master. He protected us from wild places of the earth. We refused to believe that he died. In every generation, the bravest satyrs pledged their lives to find Pan. They searched the earth, exploring all the wildest places, hoping to find where he's hidden and awake for him to sleep. And you want to be a searcher? It's my life's dream, he said. My father was a searcher, and my Uncle Ferdinand, the statue you saw back there. Oh, right. Sorry. Grover shook his head. Uncle Ferdinand knew the risk, so did my dad, but I'll succeed. I'll be the first searcher to return alive. Hang on, the first? Grover took his reed pipes out of his pocket. No searchers ever come back. Once they set out, they disappear. They're never seen again. Not once in 2,000 years? No. And your dad? You have no idea what happened to him? None. But you still want to go? I said, amazed. I mean, you really think you'll be the one to find Pan? I have to believe that, Percy. Every searcher does. It's the only thing that keeps us from despair when we look at humans, what humans have done to the world. I have to believe Pan can still be awakened. I stared at the orange haze of the sky and tried to understand how Grover could pursue a dream that seemed so hopeless. Then again, was I any better? How are we going to get into the underworld? I asked him. I mean, what chance do we have against a god? I mean, he admitted, but back at Medusa's, when you were searching her office, Annabeth was telling me, oh, I forgot. Annabeth will have a plan all figured out. Don't be so hard on her, Percy. She's had a tough life. But she's a good person. After all, she forgave me. His voice faltered. What do you mean? I asked. Forgave you for what? Suddenly Grover seemed very interested in playing notes on his pipes. Wait a minute, I said. Your first keeper job was 5 years ago. Annabeth's been at the camp for 5 years. She wasn't, your first assignment that went wrong. I can't talk about that, Grover said. And his quivering lower lip suggested he'd start crying if I pressed him. But as I was saying, back at Medusa's, Annabeth and I agreed there's something strange going on with the quest. Something isn't what it seems. Well, duh. I'm getting blamed for stealing a thunderbolt that Hades took. That's not what I mean, Grover said. The kindly ones were sort of holding back, like Mrs. Dodds at Yancey Academy. Why did she wait so long to try and kill you? Then on the bus, they weren't as aggressive as they could have been. They seemed pretty aggressive to me. Grover shook his head. They were screeching at us. Where is it? Where is it? Asking about me, I asked. Maybe. But Annabeth and I, we both got the feeling they weren't asking about a person. They said, where is it? They seemed to be asking about an object. That doesn't make sense. I know, but if we've misunderstood something about this quest, and if we only have 9 days to find the Master Bolt, he looked at me like I was hoping for an answer, but I didn't have any. I thought about what Medusa had said. I was being used by the gods. What lay ahead of me was worse than petrification. I haven't been straight with you. One told Grover. I think that means to say I told Grover. I don't mean about the Master Bolt. I agreed to go to the underworld so I could bring back my mother. Grover blew a soft note on the pipes. I know that, Percy. But are you sure that's the only reason? I'm not doing it to help my father. He doesn't care about me. I don't care about him. Grover glazed down from his tree branch. Look, Percy, I'm not as smart as Annabeth. I'm not as brave as you, but I'm pretty good at reading emotions, and you're glad your dad's alive. You feel good that he's claimed you, and part of you wants to make him proud. That's why you mailed Medusa's head to Olympus. You wanted him to notice what you'd done. Yeah, well, maybe Satyr emotions work differently than human emotions, because you're wrong. I don't care what he thinks. Grover put his feet up on the branch. Okay, Percy, whatever. Besides, I haven't done anything worth bragging about. We barely got out of New York, and we're stuck here with no money and no way west. Grover looked at the night sky like he was thinking about that problem. How about I take first watch, huh? You can get some sleep? I wanted to protest, but he started to play Mozart, soft and sweet, and I turned away, my eyes stinging. After a few bars of Piano Concerto No. 12, I was asleep. In my dreams, I stood in a dark cavern before a gaping pit. Gray mist creatures churned around me, whispering rags of smoke that I knew something were the spirits or the dead. They tugged at my clothes, trying to pull me back, but I felt compelled to walk forward to the very edge of the chasm. Looking down made me dizzy. The pit yawned so wide and was completely black. I knew it must be bottomless, yet I had the feeling that something was trying to rise from the abyss, something huge and evil. The little hero, an amused voice echoed far down the darkness. Too weak, too young, perhaps you will do. The voice felt ancient, cold, and heavy. It wrapped around me like sheets of lead. They have misled you, boy, it said. Barter with me, I'll give you what you want. A shimmering image hovered over the void. My mother, frozen at the moment, she dissolved in a shower of gold. Her voice was distorted with pain, as if the Minotaur was still squeezing on her neck. Her eyes looked directly at me, pleading, Go! I tried to call out, but my voice wouldn't work. Cold laughter echoed from the chasm. An invisible force pulled me forward. It would drag me in the pit unless I stood firm. Help me rise, boy. The voice became hungrier. Bring me the bolt. Strike a blow against the treacherous gods. The spirits of the dead whispered around me. No, wake! The image of my mother began to fade. The thing in the pit tightened its unseen grip around me. I realized it wasn't interested in pulling me in. It was using me to pull itself out. Good, it murmured, good. Wake, the dead whispered, wake. Someone was chasing me. My eyes opened. It was daylight. Well, Annabeth said, the zombie lives. I was trembling from the dream. I could still feel the grip of the chasm monster around my chest. How long was I asleep? Long enough for me to cook breakfast. Annabeth tossed me a bag of nacho-flavored corn chips from Auntie M's snack bar. And Grover went exploring. Look, he's found a friend. My eyes had trouble focusing. Grover was sitting cross-legged on a blanket with something fuzzy in his lap. A dirty, unnaturally pink stuffed animal. No, it wasn't a stuffed animal. It was a pink poodle? The poodle yapped at me suspiciously. Grover said, "No, he's not." I blinked. "Are you talking to that thing?" The poodle growled. "This thing," Grover warned, "is our ticket west. Be nice to him." "You can talk to animal?" Grover ignored the question. "Percy, meet Gladiora. Gladiora, Percy." I stared at Annabeth. Figured she'd crack up at this practical joke they're playing on me, but she looked deadly serious. "I am not saying hello to a pink poodle," I said. "Forget it." "Percy," Annabeth said. "I said hello to the poodle. You say hello to the poodle." The poodle growled. I said hello to the poodle. Grover explained that he'd come across Gladiora in the woods, and they'd struck up a conversation. The poodle had run away from a rich local family who posted $200 reward for his return. Gladiora didn't really want to go back to the family, but he was willing to if it meant helping Grover. "How does Gladiora know about the reward?" I asked. "He read the signs," Grover said. "Duh." "Of course," I said. "Silly me." "So we turn in Gladiora," Annabeth explained in her strategy voice. "We get money and we buy tickets to Los Angeles. Simple." I thought about my dream, the whispering voices of the dead, the thing in the chasm, and my mom's face, shimmering as it dissolved into gold. All that might be waiting for me in the West. "Not another bus," I said wearily. "No," Annabeth said. She pointed downhill towards train tracks I hadn't been able to see last night in the dark. "There's an Amtrak station half a mile away. According to Gladiora, the westbound train leaves at noon." Chapter 13. Plunge to my death. We spent 2 days on the Amtrak, heading west through hills, over rivers, past amber waves of grain. We weren't attacked once, but I didn't relax. I felt we were traveling around in a display case, being watched from above and maybe from below, and something was waiting for the right opportunity. I tried to keep a low profile because my name and my picture were splattered on the front pages of several East Coast newspapers. The Trenton Register News showed a picture taken by a tourist as they got off a Greyhound station. I had a wild look in my eyes. My sword was metallic blur in my hand. It might have been a baseball bat or a lacrosse stick. The picture's caption read, "12-year-old Percy Jackson wanted for questioning to the Long Island disappearance of his mother 2 weeks ago, is shown here fleeing from the bus where he accosted several elderly female passengers. The bus exploded on the East New Jersey roadside shortly after Jackson fled the scene. Based on eyewitness accounts, police believe the boy may be traveling with 2 teenage accomplices. His stepfather, Gabe Ugliano, has offered a cash reward for information leading to his capture." "Don't worry," Annabeth told me. "Mortal police could never find us." But she didn't sound so sure. The rest of the day I spent alternatively pacing the length of the train, because I had a really hard time sitting still, or looking out the windows. Once I spotted a family of centaurs galloping across a white wheat field, bows at the ready as they hunted at lunch. Little boy centaur, who was the size of a second grader on a pony, caught my eye and waved. I looked around the passenger car, but no one else had noticed. The adult riders all had their faces buried in laptop computers or magazines. Another time towards the evening, I saw something huge moving through the woods. I could have sworn it was a lion, except lions don't live wild in America. And this thing was the size of a Hummer. Its fur glinted gold in the evening light, then it leapt through the trees and was gone.